Hello, I wanted to make a video about my Makefile setup, not because it's some kind of state of the art, but because back when I started using Make for compiling my C code, I found out that there's a bit of a lack of information on how to make somewhat simple setups that is still a bit more advanced than what we see in almost 90% of the tutorials out there. So with this said, let's look at the code. Now, this is my main idea, is basically have a project directory where I have a bin directory, and inside the bin directory I have organized all the object files, basically copying the folder structure of our source directory. And in our source directory we organized each file based with folders, maybe based on whatever we wanted. So like this could be like math, this could be like backend, this could be frontend, or we can have another directory. And I also wanted to have a folder structure or a makefile that can get each C file, no matter how deep it was in the folder structure or the folder tree. So yeah, let's look at, I'll leave it like so, and let's look at the code. So okay. So our first variable that we see at the top is the so-called make flags. Now, I don't think I found it. Now, this is one of those variables that are kind of occult, if we can say it like that, because I didn't found it while reading the documentation. You don't see it, people using it when in the basic tutorials. So yeah, but I found it eventually and I'm using it. It's basically saying it allows us to basically pass flags to make. But for example, you can say, okay, we have J6, like, and what this does is equals to calling like make whatever the file is we want to make, and we pass a J6 flag. And J6 basically means I'm using multiple threads to compile the files, if possible. And I have silent because I don't want like walls of text of how it's compiling or whatever. And of course we add these flags to our make by using the plus equals, because it adds to this variable. Next we have our cc variable, which is again pre-made variable. If we don't change it, it will be something default. In this case I want it to be Clang because I'm using Clang. Next we have our variables that define the directories we want to have or we are using. Like I said, okay, source directory is like relative file path that is ends in source. We have the bin the same way, they include. Then we have the, if we are using any libraries. Actually I haven't used any up to this point, but I'm adding this just because I think it kind of looks cool. It imitates like a more professional project look. And then I'm creating the object directory, which is this directory in the bin. And I'm saying, okay, use the bin directory and call it object directory. Next is our C files list. Now this was kind of the core of this setup, because I wanted, as I said, I wanted to have like super, if possible, I mean, if I'm using such a case, I want it to be covered by the Makefile to have like super nested files. So for this we are saying the following. We're using the for each function as like the main function, and we are calling on the source directory and we call in each element of the, basically for each makes a list of elements. It could be directories, it could be non-directories, doesn't matter. And we'll adjust the result base in this later part. So basically it goes for each of elements, or each of these elements in the source directory, and it would, in our case it would be bin, it would go into S in the source, and any other directories that we have. Oh, actually it won't go in the bin because it's the, yeah, it's the source directory. Anyway, it will go, let me just, basically it will go, let's clean it up. Basically we'll go into this directory and go all of, look, create a list with all of these elements. And as you can see, it will even take the main.c. But it will do nothing on it because this is like, I think it takes the main directory as well. Anyway, so the second part is where we will filter out, or we will traverse the folder structure and get all the C files. Now this wildcard function, basically wildcard functions, creates a list of items based on this pattern. In our case, it takes the directory, and for example, I think this covers the case where we have like the source directory, and it will take this main file, and when it goes to the next directory, it will capture this file, I think. But this bit will help us with the other part of the design where I wanted to have it like, okay, go inside, find all of the files that are .c, no matter where they are or how deep they go into the folder structure, and get those and add it to the to our C files list. Next, we have the object files, and the object files list is created basically by reusing the C files, but we're basically saying, okay, take everything up to the .c file and paste it here and suffix it with .o and prefix it with an object directory, which is here, where okay, it's here. So basically this will do, like, let's say this is, let's take this file C, so it's like slash src slash dir 01, it's ugly, file C, and it will take all this and would make it into what is like bin slash obj source src, then will be dir, and then we .c, I mean file .c. So basically this is what this line does. The one below it creates the dependency files, and dependency files, if you probably know, are used by Makefile to make sure it's not compiling something that was already compiled but the source C file was not changed, and uses the same logic. I'm basically saying, okay, place the dependency files with the object files, basically here. Okay, so next we have our include directories. I am including my include directory here, as I said, as I declared it here, but also I'm including every element in the source directory, basically going here, and I'm adding it. I don't know why I was doing this, but I think it was because I had some problems where the H files were not being detected properly. Not sure, but I leave it there. Anyway, next is the lib directories. I'm adding those as a flag, of course, and these are again the flags. We have the linking flags. I'm using LLDB from Clang. Anyway, next is the Windows flag because I'm on Windows and I'm using PowerShell in this, but yeah, sometimes I use Windows calls and this basically covers for me. Then we have the compiling flags, which is O3 is the optimization. I usually remove it when sometimes I don't. This is G3, which is the debugging flag I'm using for Clang or the LLDB. Then is the LLDB again. I found actually that adding this here and this as it is gives me proper debugging. Next, I'm adding like all the warnings, all the extra warnings, all the errors, and removing the warning about unused variable. Sometimes I leave, I omit this. And this is like kind of old. I'm using 23, but basically defining the C standard. And I'm using for the D flags, I'm using I think this created the proper dependence. Yeah, okay. Let's move forward. Then we have a variable for our project name, and we create a binary with the project name. Or we're creating a variable that holds where our final output will be, and yeah, in the style of Windows, of course, because it's exe. Okay, next we have our run function. Basically, it depends on the compile recipe. So this is the run recipe, depends on the compile recipe. The run recipe is basically we're calling our binary, which is this thing. So basically, when I say in make run, so let's say here I'm saying like make run, and it will automatically compile, and then once it compiles, it runs it for me. I found it very useful. So next, let's get our pen. Next is of course the compile recipe, which depends on all the object files which we created a list of right here. So basically goes through all of the object files and compiles them in a binary, which again is this thing. So basically once it compiles the binary, it goes and runs it. Now of course the next is the object file recipe. Here again is a bit kind of a tricky part, because I used to do like without this and just